Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, my name is Dinda Rasya Pitri. Everyone call me Dinda. So, today I'm going to explain to you all about introduction to discourse analysis. So, here are my explanation. The material that we are going to discuss today, first is about intonation and discourse, 2 is about cohesion and texture, 3 is about discourse makers that deal with language, meaning, and context. 4 is about discourse and semantics. 5 is about discourse and relevance theory. 6. Discourse and information structure. 7. Historical discourse analysis. 8. Topology and discourse analysis. And the last one is register variation. Going to the first material is about intonation and discourse that current views within Elizabeth Cooper and Kuhland. The views is divided into 3 types. It is first is looking back, looking now, and looking ahead. First is looking back. There was no such field in the state of the art of intonation and discourse a quarter of a century ago. Some even thought it imperative to think of intonation, like phonetic, as being outside of language. And looking at now, today there has been a major paradigm shift with respect to the role of intonation in language. Few, if any linguists today would wish to deny the fact that intonation impacts with language. And if we are looking ahead, they were also divided into 2. First is about beyond the intonation praise, and second is about beyond intonation. Beyond to the intonation praise. As soon as one perspective switches, or all intonation units alike, barely just exposed in time, or are there differences with them? On onset level of an intonation praise in language, On onset level of an intonation praise in English, it usually defined as the last pitch accent of the praise, and register defined as the relative position of an intonation praise within a speaker's overall voice range. It is from Crittenden, 1986, page 129. And beyond intonation, the focus here will be on timing. Moreover, our scientific tradition provides us with objectives, ways of dividing up time neatly and of measuring it precisely. The next material is about cohesion and texture. Cohesion is one part of the study of texture, which consider the interaction of cohesion with other aspects of text organization. Texture, in turn, is one aspect of the study of coherence, which takes the social context of the texture into consideration. The goal of discourse analysis in this tradition is to build a model that places texts in their social context and look comprehensively at the resources which both integrate and situate them. Discourse semantics. Halliday's non-constructural textual resources reworked as semantic system concerned with discourse structure. It is comprising about first is identification, second is negotiation. Negotiation is concerned with resources for exchange of information and of goods and services in dialogue. 3. Conjunction. Conjunction is concerned with resources for connecting messages via addition, comparison, temporality, and causality. And the last one is ideation. Ideation is concerned with the semantic of lexical relation as they are deployed to construe institutional activity. Next, modeling social context. Its register and genre. We can have coherence without texture as long as we can providing our example are short and carefully excerpted, and providing that we can access the social context of such example. In SFL, social context is modeled through register and genre theory. Then we are going to the next material. It's about discourse makers that deal with language, meaning, and context. Discourse makers, it's divided three perspectives. First is about markers and cohesion. 2 is about markers and discourse. 3 markers and pragmatics. First, markers and cohesion. Halliday and Hassan proposed that a set of cohesive devices, reference, repetition, substitution, ellipsis, and conjunction, help create a text by indicating semantic relation is an underlying structure of ideas. Makers and discourse. From Shipfin, 1987, define discourse makers as sequentially dependent elements that brackets unit of talk. For example, non-obligatory utterance, initial item that function in relation to ongoing talk and text. Markers and pragmatics. Pressure-theoretical framework concern the meaning of sentences, especially how one type of pragmatic marker in a sentence may relate the message conveyed by the sentence to the message of a prior sentence. Pressure's framework depends upon a differentiation between context and pragmatic meaning. Discourse makers tell us not only about the linguistic properties, for example like semantic and pragmatics meaning, source and function, of a set of frequently used expression and the organization of social interaction and situation in which they are used, but also about the cognitive, expressive, social, and textual competence of those who use them. Because the function of marker are so broad, any and all analysis of markers, even those focusing on only a relatively narrow aspect of their meaning or a small portion of their uses, can teach us something about their role in the discourse. Discourse and semantics. First is about the shifting paradigm. Linguists begin models of inference to determine grammatically as well as meaning. Feel more interest in describing discoursal effects. Moreover, as Tolnaker, Cole, and Green, and Morgan argue, the presence of pragmatics principle is an integrated theory of linguistic description clarifies the function assigned to semantics and syntax. Inesicality and anaphor, pronouns for third person used to point to people and things in immediate context are being used or inesically or deictically, while those assigned to reference based on coreference with a noun phrase in the preceding discourse are called anaphoric. Presupposition. Presupposition is also a discourse of pragmatic motion, since the knowledge and belief of the speakers and the audience about things in the world are crucial in determining whether a sentence like the sentence makes sense. Speech Act, Harness, and Gazar-Cham point inferential model of meaning incorporating speech at theory and Grecian pragmatics. This attempt went along with an increasing awareness that this so-called null context posited by Katz and others in interpretive semantics was itself a special context or at least an invitation to image some context appropriate to the sentence in question. Coherence and discourse. In structural approach, the aim is to discover the rule which is followed result in an acceptable or well-formed text. According to one example of this approach, discourse is acceptable to the extent that it exhibits coherence relation between segments. Relevance and coherence. Principle of relevance is based on the hearer's recognition that it is an act of ostensive communication, that is, an act of deliberate, overt communication in which the speaker not only intends to convey a particular message but is also actively helping the hearer recognize this. Relevance is defined in terms of contextual effect and processing effort. The reassessment of coherence relation. There are three. First is sequence, explanation, and exemplification. Sequence. Cartoons 1993 analysis of this sequence is correct. These relations are a consequence of the way in which the hearer of this utterance use contextual information to develop the linguistic determined semantic representation into a proposition which can achieve optimal relevance. Explanation. Since the hearer has recognized that this is how the utterance achieve relevance, there is no justification for recovering the information that it stands in a particular coherent relation. Exemplification is a common way of providing evidence for a claim or equivalently giving a reason for believing something. It is formed from Carson, 1992, page 11. Implication for discourse and understanding. Discourse coherence provides the key to a theory of discourse comprehension, that is, principle of relevance. Since relevance-based approaches are concerned with the process of utterance understanding rather than the structure of the discourse, and appeal to a contextual effect rather than coherent relation, it is not surprising that relevant theoretic analysis of this expression are significantly different from coherence-based ones. The next material is about discourse and information structure. Theoretical framework. First, focus or presupposition. The term of focus refers to that portion of an utterance that represents new information. Presupposed information is the complement of focus. A presupposition is a proposition that is presupposed in this way. Because utterances are intended to be informative instead, the proposition being proposed is open, that is, lacking certain information. And then, new to the discourse versus new to the hearer. Prince, 1992, offers a pair of cross-cutting dichotomies which classify information as on the one hand either discourse old or discourse new, and on the other hand either hearer old or hearer new. Discourse old information is that which has been evoked in the prior discourse, while hearer old information is that which the speaker believes to be present within the hearer's knowledge store. This distinction captures the fact that what is new to the discourse needs to be new to the hearer. It is from Firbas, 1966, Shape, 1976, Lumberg, 1994. That is, an entity may be familiar to the hearer yet new to the discourse. Next, linking relation. The link within an utterance is the linguistic material representing information which stand in a contextuality, license post relation with information evoked in or inferable from the prior context, and serve as a point of connection between the information presented in the current utterance and the prior context. Next is preposing. As we use the term, a preposing is a sentence in which a lexically governed phrasal constituent appears to the left of its canonical position. Typical sentence initially. Ward, 1988. Postposing. The term postposing denotes any construction in which a lexically governed phrasal constituent appears to the right of its canonical position, typically but not exclusively in sentence final position, leaving its canonical position either empty or else occupied by an expletive. Next, argument reversal. Inversion. In inversion, the logical subject appears in post-verbal position while some other, canonically post-verbal, constituent appears in pre-verbal position. Passivization. Like inversion, English by phrase passives refers the canonical order of two constituents. And like inversion, they are also constrained pragmatically in that the syntactic subject must not represent newer information within the discourse that does the MP in the by phrase. We claim that passivization and inversion represent distinct syntactic means for performing the same discourse function in different syntactical environments. Left dislocation. Left dislocation is superficially similar to presposing, but in left dislocation, a coferential pronoun appears in the marked constituent canonical position. Right discolation. Like essential and presentational, their insertion, right dislocation involves the non-canonical placement of an argument of the verb in post-verbal position. However, in contrast to both existential and presentational, their insertion, right dislocation or RD, does not require the post-verbal NP to represent new information. Historical Discourse Analysis. Introduction. A scope of discourse analysis. Standard treatment of discourse analysis cover a wide range of topics including cohesion and coherence, anapora, information structuring, turn-taking, boundary or peak marking, and else. And then the second is scope of historical discourse analysis. The first approach involved an application of discourse analysis to language history. It is the study of discourse form, function, or structure. The second approach involves an application of discourse analysis to historical linguistics. It is the study of discourse pragmatic factors in language change or of the discourse motivation behind diachronic change, whether phonological, morphological, syntactical, or semantic. A third approach involving a synthesis of discourse and diachrony, it involves a study of the change in discourse marking, function, and structure over time. In historical discourse analysis, there are four explanation. First is about discourse makers. The second is about inflectional form. Third is about discourse-oriented historical linguistics. And the last one is diachronical-oriented discourse analysis. In diachronical-oriented discourse analysis, there is also divided into three. It is the origin and development of discourse makers, changes in discourse marking, changes in text type. In the origin and development of discourse maker, the evolution of this have related their development to the unlinear course of grammaticalization proposed by Trugout, from propositional or ideational to interpersonal or expressive meaning, following three principles of semantic change. There are three tendencies in this material. And then, changes in discourse marking. The loss of particular discourse makers has been accounted for by both grammatical changes and the shift from the literate to the oral mode. And then the change in the text type. Bieber and Finnegan have examined changes in a variety of written and speech-based genres in English in respect to a number of grammatical features. Confirmation of this trend is provided by Gorlach, who find evidence of a shift from of oral to written tradition, of a gradual development of general convention, and of the introduction of social distinction in the target audience in the linguistic, social, and technical aspect of the text type. Next is about topology and discourse analysis. Problems of typological discourse analysis. The first one is existing reference grammar of less known languages generally have very little in the way of discourse analysis. And another problem is in a topological study, the linguist is not going to know all the language under investigation very well. While in the traditional discourse study, the investigator is likely to be a native speaker or very proficient in the language under investigation. And next, universal system of classification of discourse function. Here, also divided into three explanations. First is about referential distance and topic per system. 2 is about temporal sequencing. 3 is about other type of text count. You can read it by yourself. Go to the next is about translation data. Translation provides another means of comparing discourse function in different language, and it is useful in that it gives some ideas of the functional similarity or difference between construction in different languages. Going to the last material is about register variation, a corpus approach. There are two material in this. First is about a register perspective on traditional linguistic investigation, and second is about register comparison. A register perspective on traditional linguistic investigation. Characteristic of the textual environment interact with register differences. So that strong pattern of use is one register often represent only weak patterns in other register. For lexical analysis, we illustrate this association by considering the most common downstoners in English. These words are roughly synonymous in meaning, but they have quite different distribution across register. Register comparison. First, overviewing of the multidimensional or MD approach to register variation. This analysis included consideration of a wide range of linguistic characteristics, identifying the way that these features configure themselves into underlying dimension of variation. Next, comparison of the major oral or literate dimension in English, Korean, and Somali. These three languages represent quite different language type and social situation, thus provide a good basis for exploring systematic cross-linguistic patterns of register variation. And then next, register variation in more specialized domains. Applies the MD model of variation in English to a study of disciplinary texts, comparing professional research article, university-level textbook, and university student papers in biology history. And I think that's all that my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.